Hello, my dear students. Today we are going to study Chapter 7, The Girl Who Was Annie Frank, written by Louis De Jong from your 10th Standard SSLC First Language English Part 2. This lesson presents the true story of Annie Frank, a Jewish teenage girl whose diary became a powerful voice against hatred, war, and racial persecution. Through her simple words, Annie shows us that even in the darkest times, humanity, courage, and hope can survive. This chapter helps us understand history not through dates but through the life of a young girl. Students, now let me introduce you to the characters. Annie Frank, a sensitive, intelligent Jewish girl whose diary reflects courage, honesty, and hope. The next character is Otto Frank, Annie's loving father, wise and human who protected and later published her diary. The next character is Margot Frank, Annie's elder sister, quite obedient and serious. The next character is Mrs. Frank, Annie's mother, caring but emotionally distant from Annie. The next character is Mr. Van Dan, Otto Frank's business partner and fellow refugee. The next character is Mrs. Van Dan, a nervous woman who shared the hiding place. The next part is Peter Van Dan, the teenage son, Annie's first emotional attachment. The next character is Meeb Geese, Otto Frank's brave typist who saved Annie's diary. The next character is the dentist, Mr. Dussel, a Jewish refugee who lived in hiding with them. Now let's begin with the first part, Faith in Humanity. This paragraph shows how Annie Frank's diary restores faith in humanity. A professor answers a difficult question by saying that Annie's diary proves the human race is worth saving. For an example, one honest life story can inspire hope in millions. The next part is a small book with a big impact. The diary creation and survival are as dramatic as it contents. No one imagined that this small diary would touch the entire world. For an example, small voices often carry the strongest truths. The next part is worldwide recognition. Annie's diary was translated into many languages and adapted into plays and films, winning global recognition. For an example, true stories connect people beyond borders. The next part is knowing the girl behind the diary. To understand the diary's success, we must understand Annie herself as a person. For an example, a writer personality gives life to words. The next part is Annie's family background. Otto Frank was a banker. Annie was born into a loving family and was affectionately called Tender One. For an example, a loving family shapes a child's emotional strength. The next part is migration to the Netherlands. Due to Hitler's anti Jewish laws, the Frank moved to Amsterdam. Otto Frank earned respect through kindness. For an example, humanity earns loyalty even in hard times. The next part is Annie as a student. Annie was not academically brilliant but emotionally sharp, talkative, and curious about people. For an example, emotional intelligence is as important as academic success. The next part is preparing the secret annex. Otto Frank prepared secret room in his office building to hide his family. For an example, forethought can protect lives. The next part is sudden life in hiding. When Margaret received a deportation notice, the families immediately went into hiding. For an example, crisis demands quick action. The next part is songbirds in a cage. The 8 people lived silently depending on helpers with only a radio and a cat for company. For an example, freedom is valued when it is lost. The next part is the birth of diary. Annie wrote about fear, loneliness, and adolescence, comparing herself to a caged songbird. Example, writing becomes emotional survival. The next part is emotional growth and love. The diary reveals Annie's emotional struggles, love, and growing maturity. For an example, hardship accelerates maturity. The next part is a sacred secret. Annie kept the diary private. Otto Frank respected her privacy and never read it during her life. For an example, trust strengthens family bonds. The next part is arrest by the Nazis. The hiding place was discovered and all were arrested. For an example, cruelty often arrives without warning. The next part is camps and death. Annie showed courage in Auschwitz and Belsen but died of illness along with her sister. For an example, true bravery shines in suffering. The next part is Otto Frank and publication. Otto Frank survived and later read Annie's diary, leading to its publication. For an example, a daughter's voice became father's mission. The next part is Annie's global legacy. Annie's diary awakened the world, especially Germany, promoting tolerance and humanity. For an example, words can change generation. Students, now let's see what is the conclusion. Annie Frank's life was short, but her message is eternal. Through her diary, she teaches us that courage does not mean absence of fear, but the strength to hope despite fear. Though surrounded by hatred, she believed in human goodness. Her words continue to guide the world towards peace, tolerance, and humanity. Annie lives on not in years but in hearts. Students, the moral is very simple. Hatred destroys, but love and tolerance heal humanity. Annie Frank teaches us that even a young voice can stand against cruelty and remind the world that people are truly good at heart. If you like the video, give a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, and do comment. See you in the next class. Until then, bye.